Have you ever noticed how some books are treated like dangerous objects? Not just bad books, not boring books, but books that people were genuinely afraid of. Books that governments tried to hide, remove, or make disappear. And here's the strange part. Most of these books aren't violent. They're not illegal. They're not even trying to shock you. They're just honest. So why do stories like this scare people so much? And what happens when an idea becomes powerful enough to be banned? Today, we're talking about books that cross that line. Let's start with one of the most extreme cases. The Satanic Verses by Salman Rushdie came out in 1988. It's a novel that mixes dreams, religion, satire, and magical realism. The story follows two Indian actors who survive a plane explosion and slowly begin to change in symbolic, almost surreal ways. Here's where things got serious. People weren't just offended, they were furious. Many Muslims believed the book disrespected Islam and the Prophet Muhammad. What started as criticism quickly turned into global outrage. The book was banned in several countries, protests broke out, and tensions exploded. At one point, Iran's religious leader issued a fatwa calling for Rushdie's death. Think about that for a second. A book leading to a death sentence. From that moment on, this wasn't just literature anymore. Rushdie had to live under constant security for years, simply because of something he wrote. If this happened today, it would feel like a TV show dropping one episode so controversial that it gets deleted everywhere overnight. And the creator becomes the most talked about person on the internet. Except this wasn't online drama. This was real life. Now let's shift to a completely different story. What if the book being censored isn't fiction at all, but someone's childhood? Persepolis by Marjane Satrapi is a graphic memoir. It tells the story of her growing up during the Iranian Revolution and the Iran-Iraq War. Through simple drawings, she shows what it's like to be a kid surrounded by politics, violence, and strict rules. Here's the uncomfortable question. If history is real, why are we afraid to show it? Some schools decided Persepolis wasn't appropriate for younger students. They pointed to images of war, executions, political repression, and strong language. But Persepolis isn't trying to shock anyone. It's just telling the truth through the eyes of a child who lived it. Now for the one almost nobody expects. How does a children's fantasy book end up banned? Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone is about magic, friendship, and growing up. And yet, in some places, it was removed from schools because people believed it promoted witchcraft and conflicted with religious values. So while millions of kids around the world were obsessed with Hogwarts, others were told this story was forbidden. So yeah, even Harry Potter didn't escape censorship. Imagine telling Harry, "Sorry, mate, you can't go to magic school. The school board says your subject matter is offensive." Harry would just stand there like, "What?" In some places, especially in school systems, the books were challenged because people believed they encouraged witchcraft or even violence, which is kind of funny, considering Harry usually spends his time trying to save everyone. Outside of those bans, though, Harry Potter stayed massive. The movies broke records, the fandom exploded, and the wizarding world kept growing. So even when the books were removed from classrooms in a few countries or districts, the boy who lived was still very much alive and being read everywhere else. Now let's jump way back into the future. Brave New World by Aldous Huxley came out in 1932, and it imagined a world that felt completely insane at the time. Babies are grown in laboratories. People take pills to stay happy. Families don't really exist. Love is casual. Everything is controlled. Honestly, it sounds like a dystopian Netflix series today, but back then, it shocked people. Some countries banned it almost immediately. Critics said it was anti-family, anti-religion, and morally dangerous. Later on, other places accused Huxley of being obscene because the book talks openly about sex and drugs, which is kind of ironic because he wasn't trying to be shocking for fun. He was warning people about what could happen if comfort, pleasure, and control replaced freedom and humanity. Even decades later, the book kept getting challenged in schools for things like nudity references or drug use. Meanwhile, it became required reading in universities. People clearly couldn't stop reading it. They just kept arguing about whether they should. Now let's talk about a book that feels a little too close to home for a lot of people. The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood is set in a future version of the United States where women lose their rights and are controlled by a strict religious government. If you've seen the TV show, you already know how disturbing that world is. The book has been banned or challenged in several schools for sexual content, strong language, and what critics called obscenity. Some parents and officials argued it was inappropriate or vulgar. But here's the uncomfortable part. The story is about oppression, about power, about what happens when rights are taken away. And that's exactly why it makes people uncomfortable. It talks openly about bodies, control, and violence, not to shock readers, but to force them to look at reality. It's meant to make you uneasy. It's meant to raise questions, which is probably why wherever it shows up, whether in a classroom or on a streaming platform, it immediately sparks arguments. And it usually doesn't stay quiet for long. Some people even joked online that The Handmaid's Tale is becoming so relevant to real-life politics that one day we might actually start seeing people walk around in red cloaks. Thankfully for now, that part is still fiction. Now let's lighten things up a bit. Captain Underpants. Yes, that Captain Underpants. The children's book series about a grumpy school principal who turns into a superhero wearing nothing but underpants. You'd think this would be completely harmless, right? Well, it turned out to be one of the most challenged children's book series in the United States. Some parents complained about offensive language and bad behavior, which is kind of funny because the worst things in these books are fart jokes and silly pranks. The violence usually involves things like shooting eggs or glue at people. Still, some adults took it very seriously. Schools tried to remove the books, arguing they promoted disrespect and poor behavior. Librarians pushed back, pointing out that the series actually got a lot of kids excited about reading for the first time. At its core, Captain Underpants is about two fourth graders using their imagination, breaking rules, and laughing at authority. It's goofy, exaggerated, and very obviously meant to be a joke. And yet, even underwear was apparently too much for some censors. Now let's talk about a graphic novel where the word graphic means something very different. Maus by Art Spiegelman tells the story of the Holocaust using animals instead of people. Jews are drawn as mice. Nazis are cats. It sounds strange at first, but the result is powerful, emotional, and deeply respectful. Despite winning major awards, Maus was removed from some school curriculums. In one case, officials objected to a few swear words and a brief scene showing nudity during a family bath. That was enough for them to label it inappropriate, even though the book is about genocide, survival, and historical trauma. What makes it even more ironic is that Maus was also banned in another country because of a swastika shown on the cover. Even though the book is clearly anti-Nazi, context didn't seem to matter. So a story written by the child of Holocaust survivors, meant to preserve memory and history, ended up being censored for symbols and language taken out of context. After public backlash, Maus was eventually brought back into classrooms. But the whole situation raised a strange question. How does a book about remembering one of the darkest moments in human history become controversial? And that brings us to another book that has never stopped making people uncomfortable, Lolita. And now, finally, we get to Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov. Let's be honest, this one is tricky. The story is about a middle-aged man who becomes obsessed with a young girl. It's uncomfortable, taboo, and definitely not something for kids. At the same time, the book is often celebrated for its language and storytelling. Nabokov plays with the narrator in a way that keeps you questioning what's real and what's not. It's clever, poetic, and complex. Because of its subject matter, Lolita was banned in many countries when it was first published. Some governments refused to allow it for years. They saw it as too adult, too provocative, and morally unacceptable. Even though it was controversial, the book had a big cultural impact. People still study it, mostly in college classes, and debate its language, style, and narrative. It became a work that challenged readers, pushed boundaries, and made people think. Exactly the kind of book that sparks discussion. If Lolita were adapted into a movie today, it would probably cause huge debate online. Nabokov didn't get permanently canceled, and today the book is considered a classic. But for years, it existed in the realm of the forbidden. Every book you heard about today was banned for a reason. Not because it was weak, but because it made people uncomfortable, because it challenged power and questioned what was acceptable. If this made you think, subscribe for the next part. Like the video if you enjoyed it, and tell me in the comments which banned book surprised you the most. We'll continue in the next one.